Good evening, everyone. I know most of you prefer diving straight into the story rather than listening to a long introduction, and usually I do the same, but tonight's story is different. What you're about to hear is something truly special. The names and places have been changed, yes, but only to protect those involved. The essence, the truth behind what happened, remains untouched. There won't be any visuals in this video. No dramatic effects, no flashing images. Just you and me sitting together in the quiet, letting the story unfold the way it was meant to. Raw, haunting, and painfully real. So, take a breath, settle in, and let me tell you a story that doesn't just chill the spine. It lingers in the mind long after the last word fades. A few days ago, I received a story from an anonymous listener. They asked that their name not be revealed, but they told me that before sending this story, they had asked permission from the elders in their family, the uncles and aunts who still guard their family household traditions. The elders hesitated at first because this story touches the reputation of one of their ancestors, their great-great-grandfather, a man once powerful and feared. But in the end, they gave their blessing, saying, "Let the story be told truthfully. Let others hear it and learn that no matter how high a person stands, karma will always find them." And that's how I'm allowed to share it with you tonight. This story happened more than 100 years ago, in the desert lands of Rajasthan, India. Back then, the villages were quiet, the nights filled with the scent of sand and oil lamps, and the world still followed the rule of the rich landlords. Among them was one man, Lord Devraj Singh, a man both respected and hated. He was the wealthiest in the region, owner of lands, wells, and hundreds of workers. But he was known not only for his wealth, but for his cruelty. He was arrogant, commanding, and merciless to anyone who stood against him. People feared him so much that when his horse passed through the village, even the wind seemed to quiet. Lord Devraj had 4 wives. The first, Kamala, was gentle and obedient, a woman who believed silence was safer than truth. The second, Amira Sir, was sharp-tongued, jealous, and cruel, known for whispering poison into others' ears. The third, Sita, was mild and devout, spending most of her days praying for peace. And the fourth, Mira, was the youngest, kind, beautiful, and pure-hearted. She was the only one Devraj ever loved sincerely. When Devraj wanted to marry Mira, she hesitated. She already knew his reputation, but in the end she agreed, on one condition. Under the shade of a neem tree with witnesses from both families, she said softly, "If you want me as your wife, then swear to me one thing. I will be your last. You may look elsewhere if your heart wanders, but you must never bring another wife into this house." Devraj, charmed and confident, swore it before the gods. "You will be the last, Mira. I swear by my ancestors in this flame." The family celebrated the marriage. For a while, everything was peaceful. Devraj truly loved Mira. He doted on her, treated her gently, something none of the other wives had ever experienced. The household grew warmer. Servants whispered that Mira's laughter had softened the master's temper. When she became pregnant, Devraj celebrated. He had a golden cradle built for the child and brought home silks from the city. The first wife, Kamala, and the third, Sita, prayed daily for Mira's safe delivery. Only Amira, the second wife, felt jealousy burn inside her chest. But Devraj's heart, though temporarily softened, had never truly changed. His arrogance and lust were old companions. He had always been trailed by rumors, of affairs, of women forced to leave their homes, of men who disappeared after confronting him. Those stories were whispered behind closed doors, but no one dared to challenge him. One day, Devraj saw Anjali, the daughter of a local teacher and healer named Rajesh Sharma. Anjali was 16, graceful and innocent, the kind of beauty that made people lower their voices when she passed. Her father, Rajesh, was a respected man. He taught the village children by day and healed the sick by night, often refusing payment from the poor. The Sharma family wasn't rich, but they were deeply respected. From the moment Devraj saw Anjali, he became obsessed. At first, he sent gifts, gold coins, silk shawls, and sweets from Jaipur. Rajesh politely refused them all. Then Devraj sent a woman to act as a go-between, suggesting that Anjali could have a better life if she married a powerful man like him. Rajesh grew furious and said, "Tell your master that my daughter will marry for love, not for wealth. And if he dares to insult my family's honor again, he'll find no welcome here." That message reached Devraj's ears, and his pride turned to fury. He wasn't used to rejection, especially not from someone he saw as beneath him. At home, Mira began to notice her husband's restlessness, the way he left the house more often, the long silences at dinner. She asked softly, "What troubles you?" But he brushed her off. The other wives noticed too. Amira smirked whenever Mira tried to hide her sadness. She whispered, "He swore to you, didn't he, that you'd be the last? Yet everyone knows whose name he is saying in his sleep now. That girl from the Sharma house." The words struck Mira like knives. She tried to ignore them. She prayed every morning, asking the gods to turn her husband's heart back. But every day she grew weaker, not from illness but from sorrow. Her pregnancy advanced, but she spent more time lying in bed, her hands cold, her face pale. Then one late night, as rain fell lightly outside, Mira went into labor. The midwives were called, and the whole household rushed about in fear and confusion. Hours passed. Her cries echoed through the mansion, then slowly faded. When dawn came, a baby boy was born, but Mira's strength was gone. As she lay dying, she asked to see Devraj one last time. When he entered the room, her eyes were dim but calm. She whispered, "You broke your promise. I asked for only one thing and you couldn't give it. You brought me love and then you took it away." She placed her trembling hand on the baby's forehead. "He will never know the cruelty of men like you. Not if my spirit can stop it." And with that, she breathed her last. Devraj stood frozen. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of loss. Not regret for his actions, but the sharp pain of being left alone. For several days, he refused food, locked himself away, and mourned. The servants whispered that their master had gone mad from grief, but soon grief turned to anger, and anger needed a target. In Devraj's twisted heart, that target became Anjali. He convinced himself that she was the cause of Mira's death, that her refusal, her purity, had somehow cursed him. And in that delusion, a dark seed began to grow. After Mira's funeral, the Singh mansion turned cold. The lamps in the courtyard burned shorter each night, and the servants spoke in whispers. The infant boy, Mira's son, was given to Amira, the second wife, to raise. Many feared that Amira, who had despised Mira, would mistreat the child. But surprisingly, she didn't. The moment she held the baby, something inside her changed. For the first time in years, her bitterness softened. She named the boy Arjun and cared for him like her own flesh. Even Devraj noticed it, though he said nothing. But while the child brought warmth to one corner of the house, a shadow deepened in another. Devraj could not stop thinking of Anjali Sharma. His grief over Mira had turned into hatred, and hatred began to twist into obsession. He told himself that it was her fault, that because of her beauty and her refusal, his beloved wife had suffered and died. That thought poisoned his mind day and night. For months he had Anjali's family watched. He sent his guards to follow her father, to learn when he left the house, when her mother went to market. And when Anjali was alone, he learned everything. That she often fetched water from the backyard well in the afternoon, that she took care of her younger brother while her parents were away, and that she never left the house without covering her face with a thin veil. In the village, the talk about Lord Devraj's interest in the girl had begun again, quietly but dangerously. People pitied the Sharma family, but no one dared to interfere. Devraj's anger was like fire. You stayed close, you burned, you spoke out, you disappeared. One afternoon, Anjali's father went to a nearby town to treat a patient. Her mother left early for the market, selling fabric that day. At home, only Anjali and her little brother were there. The boy was 5 years old, full of laughter. After feeding him lunch, Anjali put him to bed for his nap and went to the well behind the house to wash clothes. The sun was high, the air still. That was when Devraj struck. He arrived with 2 of his guards, men loyal to him more than to their own souls. They waited in the shadows until Anjali leaned over the well, pulling water in a brass pot. One of the guards threw a cloth over her mouth. She struggled, tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the heavy air. Devraj stepped out from behind the trees, his eyes dark and burning. "Now you will understand what it means to defy me," he said coldly. The guards held her down. She fainted. What happened next was an act so vile that the earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Devraj's cruelty reached its peak that afternoon. When it was done, he told his men to carry her back near the well and leave her there, to make it look like an accident. When Anjali awoke, she was weak and bleeding. Shame and terror washed over her, but she said nothing. In that time, a woman's honor was her life. To speak meant death, not to her body, but to her family's name. She cleaned herself, burned the torn fabric of her sari, and prayed that no one would ever know. She never told her parents. Only the gods heard her sobs that night. Weeks turned into months. Then one day, Anjali's parents noticed her growing pale and quiet. She often felt dizzy. Her mother asked gently, "Are you unwell, child?" But Anjali only shook her head and forced a smile. Deep inside, she knew the truth. She was carrying the child of the man who had destroyed her. As months passed, her family received a marriage proposal from a wealthy household in a nearby village. The groom's family was respectable, and Rajesh believed this was a blessing for his daughter. Anjali wanted to refuse, but how could she explain? If she spoke the truth, her father's honor would be ruined, her brother shamed, and her family destroyed. She remained silent. The wedding took place quietly, without music or celebration. Afterward, she moved into her husband's home. Her new family seemed kind at first. Her husband, Ravi, adored her. But soon, she began to live in constant fear that her secret would reveal itself. And fate was cruel. 8 months after her marriage, Anjali gave birth to a baby girl, 1 month earlier than expected. Everyone rejoiced until they saw the child's face. The baby had Devraj's eyes. Not her husband's, not hers, his. The resemblance was undeniable. Whispers began in the household. Her mother-in-law was the first to speak them aloud. "Tell me, whose child is this?" she shouted. "She bears no trace of our blood." Anjali fell to her knees, weeping, denying the accusations. "I swear upon the gods, I have never betrayed my husband," she cried. But her words found no mercy. Ravi's mother dragged her before the family shrine, screaming curses. The father-in-law looked away. Ravi himself stood silent, his face twisted in confusion and shame. Within days, the story spread to every corner of both villages. People who once admired Anjali's family now whispered behind their backs. No one believed her innocence. Finally, Ravi's mother decided, "This woman and her bastard child will not live under my roof. We will return the baby to her parents and keep the wife here. She came to us through gold and ceremony. She will die here as one of us." And so it was done. The newborn girl was sent back to the Sharma house. Anjali stayed in her husband's home, now a prisoner. She was beaten, starved, insulted every day. Ravi no longer spoke to her. He refused to share her room. Nights were endless, days were cruel. And every moment Anjali thought of her daughter and the injustice that had swallowed her life. 1 year later, unable to endure any more humiliation, she took her own life. Before she died, she left a letter for her parents. Her hands shook as she wrote, the ink smeared by tears. The letter said, "Father, Mother, please forgive me. I am innocent, but the world does not care. They call me names I do not deserve. They hurt me and curse me. I can no longer bear this pain. Please take care of my daughter, love her. Let her grow free from the sins of those who wronged me. Don't let her suffer my fate." She hung herself that night, in the very room where she once dreamed of a peaceful life. Her spirit did not rest. After Anjali's death, darkness fell upon both villages. Her story spread like smoke, thin, unstoppable, and bitter. Some people whispered that she had sinned and paid for it. Others said she had been cursed by a powerful man. But her parents, Rajesh and his wife, knew the truth. They buried their daughter with trembling hands, and held her infant granddaughter close, vowing to protect her. The little girl was named Lakshmi, after the goddess of fortune, though her birth had brought only sorrow. In the months that followed, strange things began to happen. At first, it was only whispers. Women returning from the well at dusk claimed they saw a figure dressed in red by the old banyan tree, the same color sari that Anjali had worn on her wedding day. Then the animals started acting strange. Dogs barked and howled into empty courtyards. Lamps flickered when there was no wind. People said they could hear a woman crying softly near the pond at night. One evening, Ravi's household, the family that had driven Anjali to death, was struck first. Ravi's mother, the cruel old matriarch who had cursed and beaten Anjali, began to hear knocks on her door every night. When she opened it, no one was there. At first, she thought it was children playing tricks. But the knocks grew louder, closer, more demanding. Then came the whisper right behind her ear. "Mother, will you curse me again?" The woman screamed. Her husband found her on the floor, shaking, her hair standing on end. From that night on, she could no longer sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Anjali's face, pale, eyes wide, her neck bruised by the rope. She tried to pray, but the oil lamps in the shrine blew out each time she lit them. Ravi's father, a quiet man, began to fall ill soon after. His skin turned gray, his eyes hollow. The priests who came to bless the house said the spirits of the restless were near. The family spent money on rituals, burned incense, and sacrificed goats, but nothing worked. The haunting only grew stronger. Ravi himself was tormented most of all. Every night he woke to the sound of his wife's voice calling his name. Sometimes it came from outside the window, sometimes from the corner of the room. "Ravi, do you believe me now?" The first few nights he prayed loudly, clutching his blanket. But soon he could no longer tell what was dream and what was real. One night he saw her clearly. Anjali stood at the foot of his bed, her red sari torn, her feet bare and dusty. Her eyes were no longer filled with fear. They burned with grief and fury. He cried out, "Forgive me. I was blind. I didn't know." But she only stepped closer, her voice breaking like dry leaves. "You watched them destroy me, and you said nothing." Her hands reached toward his throat. The next morning, Ravi was found dead, his face frozen in terror. No wounds, no signs of struggle, only bruises on his neck, like the marks of invisible hands. Word spread quickly. People began avoiding the Ravi household. His mother went mad with fear. She ran through the village screaming that Anjali was coming for them all. "She said she would take me next," she cried. Days later, she was found dead too. Her body slumped beside the family shrine, eyes wide open, the same terror etched on her face. By then, everyone in both villages believed it. Anjali's spirit was haunting those who had wronged her. The wells, the trees, even the roads between the houses felt cursed. Travelers refused to pass through after sunset. The Sharma home, the house where Anjali had grown up, was surrounded by offerings from fearful neighbors hoping to appease her soul. But inside that same house, Rajesh and his wife were not afraid. They believed their daughter's spirit was not evil. It was crying for justice. They prayed for her peace every night, but they also began to fear for little Lakshmi. The child sometimes woke screaming, saying she saw a woman with long hair and red clothes standing by her window. One night, Rajesh's wife heard a soft knock on the door. She froze, remembering the stories. The oil lamp flickered violently. Then she heard it again. 3 knocks, gentle but firm. She opened the door just a little and saw nothing. But in the faint glow of the moon, she noticed a small bundle on the doorstep. A strand of red thread tied around a silver bangle, the same kind Anjali had worn as a girl. From that night on, strange peace seemed to settle over the Sharma home. The crying near the pond stopped. The whispers faded. Some said Anjali's spirit had finally returned home, content that her parents were caring for her daughter. But far away, in the great Singh mansion, Lord Devraj began to dream. He dreamed of a woman walking through his courtyard, her feet silent on the marble floor. She wore red. Her face was hidden by a veil, but her presence filled the air like smoke. Each night she came closer, and each night he woke drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. By the 5th night she spoke. "You took everything from me. Now, I will take what you love." Devraj awoke, his throat dry, his hands trembling. He tried to laugh it off, to convince himself it was guilt playing tricks. But as he looked across the room, he saw something that made his blood freeze. The cradle beside his bed, where little Arjun slept, was swaying gently, though no wind stirred. Devraj's nightmare did not end with the morning light. Ever since that night, he refused to sleep in the same room as the child. He ordered the servants to move Arjun Aya's cradle to another wing of the house, and kept oil lamps burning at all hours. But even with the light, the shadows felt alive. He could swear that when he passed certain corners of the hall, the air grew colder. Amira, who had been caring for the baby, noticed the change. She saw Devraj's eyes grow darker, his temper shorter. He would sit in the courtyard for hours, whispering to himself, sometimes staring at Mira's old shrine. One night, she found him there, clutching a bottle of wine, muttering Mira's name mixed with words she couldn't understand. In the village, talk of Anjali's restless spirit had reached even the palace guards. Servants whispered that she haunted anyone tied to her suffering, and Devraj's name came up often in secret, but no one dared to mention it in front of him. Weeks later, strange things began happening in the mansion. The mirrors fogged without reason. The oil lamps burned blue instead of gold. Doors slammed even when there was no wind. And then one night, the house filled with the sound of a woman's anklets. Soft, slow, echoing through the corridors. Devraj followed the sound, holding a lantern. It led him to the nursery. Inside, the cradle swayed gently, though the windows were shut. A soft lullaby, the same one Mira used to sing, hummed in the air. Devraj's hand shook as he lifted the lantern. Standing by the cradle was a figure in red. Her long hair covered her face, but he recognized her instantly. Anjali. Devraj fell back, his voice trembling. "Stay away from me. What do you want?" She raised her head slowly. Her eyes glowed faintly in the lamplight. "You stole my life," she whispered, "and now you hold what was mine." Her gaze moved toward the sleeping child. "No!" Devraj shouted, stepping in front of the cradle. But when he blinked, she was gone. That night, he ordered guards to keep watch at every corner, and a priest was brought from Jaipur to bless the house. The priest walked through each room, sprinkling holy water and chanting. But when he reached the nursery, his voice faltered. "There is anger here," the priest said softly, "not of this world." He advised Devraj to confess his sins, to free himself before the spirit demanded payment. But Devraj, proud as ever, dismissed him. "Do your job, holy man. Spirits fear gold, not words." The priest left before sunset, refusing to take any payment. For days after, Devraj barely slept. He kept guards outside his room, forbidding anyone to enter after dark. Yet each night the anklet sounds returned, sometimes faint, sometimes near. Amira, though terrified, began to piece things together. She remembered Mira's death, the rumors of the village girl who'd gone mad, the baby born with Devraj's eyes. She dared not confront him, but one evening she went to the temple alone and prayed, whispering, "If there is truth in these whispers, show me a sign." That night she dreamed of Mira. Her face was calm, her voice soft. "Protect the children," Mira said. "The sins of men bring storms, but the innocent must be saved." Amira woke before dawn, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. She rushed to the nursery and found the cradle empty. Her scream shattered the morning silence. Servants ran in, but the child was gone. They searched the entire mansion, the gardens, even the well. Hours passed, and just as despair began to set in, one of the guards shouted from the courtyard. They found Arjun lying under the old banyan tree, unharmed but surrounded by red flower petals. His tiny fingers clutched a silver bangle, one that no one in the mansion had ever seen before. Devraj collapsed when he saw it. He knew that bangle. He had taken it from Anjali years ago, after destroying her life. Somehow it had returned, held by the hands of his son. From that moment, he could no longer deny it. The spirit was real, and it wanted him. That night, he locked himself in his chamber, trembling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Angeli's face. Every time he tried to pray, the lamps flickered out. By midnight, the air grew colder, and a faint smell of jasmine filled the room. He turned and saw her standing in the doorway, half in shadow, her eyes filled not with rage but with sorrow. She whispered, "You took my peace. Give me yours." The wind blew out every flame in the room. The guards outside heard one loud cry, then silence. When they forced the door open at dawn, Lord Devraj Singh sat slumped in his chair, dead, eyes wide. A single strand of red thread wound tightly around his wrist. From that day on, no one dared to live in the mansion again. The servants fled, and the estate fell into ruin. But those who passed by on moonless nights swore they could still hear anklets echoing in the halls, a reminder of a promise broken and a sin that refused to die. Years passed, and the once grand Singh mansion was left to rot. Vines crawled up its walls, dust covered the marble floors, and bats made their home beneath its roof. The village spoke of it only in whispers, calling it the House of the Red Woman. No one dared to enter after dark. But not everything about the story ended in tragedy, because from the ashes of that cursed household, a child had survived, the boy Arjun. Amira raised him away from the estate, taking him to live in a smaller house near the temple. She became quiet and withdrawn, spending her days praying and her nights protecting the boy from questions about his father. Arjun grew up gentle, curious, and kind. He never knew the full truth about Lord Devraj or Mira's death, only that his father had made mistakes that haunted the family. Sometimes when he asked about the old mansion, Amira would only whisper, "Some places remember pain, my son. That house remembers too much." As the years went by, the mansion became a place of pilgrimage for the curious and the reckless. Travelers who camped near it claimed to hear women crying, or anklets walking in the dust. A few even said they saw a woman in red standing by the banyan tree, holding something small in her arms. Meanwhile, far from that place, another child was growing, Lakshmi, the daughter of Anjali. She was raised by her grandparents, the Sharmas. Despite the tragedy that had surrounded her birth, they gave her love and warmth. She grew into a beautiful, compassionate woman, strong in spirit and mind. Yet sometimes when she was alone, she felt something calling her, a sadness in the wind, a melody she could not place. By fate, or perhaps by design, Arjun and Lakshmi's paths crossed years later. It was during a village festival, where families from all over the district came to celebrate. Arjun, now a young man of 25, was helping at the temple when Lakshmi arrived with her grandparents. Their eyes met across the courtyard, and though neither knew it, their bloodlines were already bound by tragedy. They met again days later, at the well outside the temple, the same kind of well that had once witnessed such horror. They spoke of ordinary things at first, the weather, the festival, the temple bells. But slowly, they found comfort in each other's company. Arjun was drawn to her calm strength. Lakshmi was moved by his gentle heart. It was as if they had known each other in another life. Weeks turned into months and affection grew. Amira, though old and tired, saw the change in her son and smiled. For the first time in decades, she felt that maybe the past was ready to forgive itself. But fate is never simple. When Lakshmi's grandparents learned that the young man courting her was the son of Lord Devraj Singh, their faces turned pale. Brajesh, now frail but still proud, said, "That name brings only ruin. If she marries into that bloodline, our daughter's soul will never rest." Lakshmi begged them to understand. "He is not his father," she cried. "He has never harmed anyone." But they refused. "The curse that began with him will not end until the truth is faced," her grandmother said. Conflicted and desperate, Lakshmi went to the temple to pray for guidance. That night, she dreamed of a woman standing in the courtyard of an old mansion, holding a lantern. The woman's face was calm, her eyes filled with sorrow, and behind her the shadow of another. a woman in red watching silently. When Lakshmi woke, she felt compelled to go there. She told Arjun what she had seen, and though he hesitated, he agreed. Together they traveled to the ruins of the old Singh estate. By the time they arrived, the sun was setting. The house stood silent, half swallowed by vines. The wind whistled through broken windows like faint voices. As they stepped inside, the air grew heavy. Dust floated in the golden light, and the scent of old incense lingered as if someone had prayed there recently. In the great hall, the portrait of Lord Devraj still hung crooked on the wall. His painted eyes seemed to follow them. Beneath it, the cradle that once belonged to Arjun lay overturned, rotted by time. Then they heard it. Soft anklet bells echoing faintly through the corridor. Arjun froze. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Lakshmi nodded, her eyes wide. The sound grew closer, the air colder. A faint light flickered at the end of the hallway. They followed it into the courtyard. There, beneath the old banyan tree, stood two figures. One was dressed in white, serene, peaceful, and the other in red, her hair flowing, her eyes glowing softly. Meera and Anjali. Lakshmi fell to her knees. Arjun couldn't speak. The two spirits looked at them silently for a long moment, then turned toward each other. Meera reached out her hand, touching Anjali's arm. The air shimmered, and for the first time, the mansion felt calm. Then Meera's voice filled the courtyard, soft as wind. "It is time to forgive." Anjali turned her gaze toward Arjun and Lakshmi, her expression no longer filled with anger but with deep sadness. She said, "Let their love be our peace." The wind picked up, swirling dust and petals around them. When it cleared, the spirits were gone. The banyan leaves rustled softly like a sigh of relief. Arjun looked at Lakshmi, tears in his eyes. "Do you think it's over?" he asked. Lakshmi took his hand and whispered, "No, but maybe now it can finally rest." That night, the two families, the Singhs and the Sharmas, met at the temple. For the first time in generations, they prayed together side by side. And as dawn rose over the village, the old mansion, long cursed and silent, stood peaceful. A single red flower bloomed at the base of the banyan tree, and from then on, no one ever heard the sound of anklets there again. The years washed over the story like sand over old stone, softening its edges but never erasing them. The Singh mansion still stood at the edge of the village, half swallowed by vines, its broken windows staring like hollow eyes. After that night beneath the banyan tree, when the two spirits had appeared, peace had returned, at least on the surface. Arjun and Lakshmi married quietly in the temple, where their families had once prayed for forgiveness. No celebration, no music, only the sound of bells and the low hum of morning wind. They left the village soon after, building their life far from the ruins that had shaped their bloodlines. But stories travel even when people do not. Villagers said that some nights when the moon hid and the air was still, two figures, one dressed in red, one in white, could be seen walking side by side through the courtyard. No longer angry, no longer bound, just walking, as if guarding the place that had witnessed their pain. Many decades later, long after Arjun and Lakshmi had passed, a descendant returned. He was not looking for ghosts. He said he came for history. But when he reached the edge of the ruins, the wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of anklets and the scent of jasmine. The banyan tree still stood, its roots knotted deep into the earth like the memory of what had happened there. He sat beneath it until dusk, tracing the old carvings on the bark. Some were names half erased by time: Devraj, Meera, Anjali. He whispered them aloud, and for a moment he thought he heard an echo, soft, like a sigh, not of pain, but of release. When the first stars appeared, he turned to leave. Behind him, the air stirred once more, and a single red flower fell from the banyan branches, landing at his feet. He picked it up and tucked it into his notebook. Later, when asked what he found at the mansion, he said, "Only silence, but not the kind that scares you, the kind that forgives you." And that was how the story ended, not with fear, but with stillness. The mansion remained. The banyan continued to bloom, and those who listened closely enough could still hear the faint rhythm of anklets fading into peace. Because some stories are not told to frighten. They are told so that the living remember. Cruelty leaves a mark, but repentance too can echo forever.